Hello and welcome. My name is Shadow and today I'm doing a bit of a different. Not really different. Normally I do build videos, and there's not a lot happening in Warframe right now. So instead, I wanted to talk about the focus schools. So a bit more of a tutorial slash discussion video. And basically, I'm going to come at the angle of when you first unlock the operator after second dream or war within, whichever one it is. I know you unlock operator. I'm just after second dream. I'm not sure which one you unlock focus schools. It could be second dream or war within. But whenever you unlock the focus schools, which one should you pick? So I'll talk about that. But I'll also talk about which one widely is the best one, or is there a best one? And like, why would you use one of these five focus schools over another one? And pretty much, what do they do? Now, for background information, I have fully maxed out at least four of the five of them. Vazarin is the only one I haven't fully maxed out, which I guess is telling already. But all the other ones I have already maxed out, and you can see I have a stockpile focus for these three, as they were the first three I maxed out. Again, you could be a bit telling. But I would like to start with the Naramon. So Naramon is a bit of an interesting one. If we go back to this page, for most builds, and you'll hear me say this at the end of most of my videos, for almost every build in the game, you never want to consider Naramon. Naramon is not a focus tool you want to even think about. It's not in the discussion for most builds. But there could be an argument for any one of the other four for most builds. However, when it comes to melee builds, at least quick attack melee builds, heavy attack builds not so much. But with quick attack melee builds, Naramon is the only focus tool you will think about. None of the other four will be used. Get rid of them, they don't exist to you. If you're using a quick attack focus tool, you are using Naramon. So Naramon is a bit different than the other four because of this, because you could argue it's the most niche, but it is so good at this niche it has that it is like no one competes with it. But Naramon is somewhat of a one-trick pony. It doesn't have a lot of different types of utility as the other ones. Really, its main selling points are three passives or slash abilities. Three passives. We have Affinity Strike, which is useful as it will give you additional affinity whenever you get melee kills. This is only really useful for when you're leveling up melees. It makes it really easy to level up melees, but outside of that, it's not really going to make much more use to you, but it is good for that. And then we have Power Strike. Now, this is why we use Naramon, and it is literally the only reason why we use Naramon in most contexts. There are some other benefits that Naramon can give us, but the reason why we are actually using it is Power Strike. That's because, well, we'll read it exactly what it does, right? Melee combo counter now decays while out of combat by 5 every few seconds instead of depleting completely. What this means is normally when you would run out of your melee combo duration on a Warframe, you will lose it completely. So you can see the smaller number, the 35, is how much combo count I have, and now it's gone, right? I've lost all my combo count. I have initial combo, that's why it was giving me 15. I just have initial combo. But if I was to switch to Naramon, and I do the same thing I just did, so again, I have 33 combo now. Oopsies. And I wait for it to run out. You'll see it now goes to 28 instead of it being gone completely. And if I wait for it to run out again, 22, 23. So it is absolutely amazing for any quick attack combo build because it makes your combo a lot more consistent when trying to keep up at 12 times combo, as if something happens and you can't hit an enemy for whatever reason before your combo duration comes out, instead of losing all of your 220 combo, which is how much you need for 12 times combo, you only lose 5. So you'll only go down to 11 times combo instead of starting back from the beginning. So Naramon is a must-have for these kind of setups. Another really good one to consider with Naramon is the opening slam. This basically just increases how fast you'll gain combo. And it's just a nice extra passive. It isn't necessarily something you'd want to use Naramon specifically for, but you definitely do benefit from it. So I just did a slam there, and if I do that... Oh, sorry, my companion is killing these dudes. Let's respawn them. So if I activate it, so now I have the double combo. As you can see, I got more combo from that slam that I got the last time I did it without it, right? So I'm getting a lot more combo while it's activated, and you can see it at the top there. Right there, that's it up there. That's the extra combo. Another thing you can do with Naramon is its first ability, with specifically the lethal levitate, as for when enemies get levitated by your first ability on Naramon, you can hit them with your operator and you'll gain up to 200% extra weapon damage. That I'm pretty sure it's base damage, though I'm not entirely sure, and it is definitely a nice buff that you can add to your weapons, and it's pretty easy to do, especially if you're running the I can't remember what it's called, but whatever amp this is that fires out the disc. So it's pretty easy to do. So you can see I got my 4 times combo there, and so I'm getting 200% extra ability, 200% extra weapon damage, right? So pretty nice and simple. That's another nice extra benefit that Naramon gives, but again, the biggest reason why you'll be using it is Power Strike. Everything else from Naramon is really not useful. Like, yes, you theoretically get extra amp damage with Amp Strike, but trust me, compared to another one of the focus schools, this does nothing. You do have Sling Stun, and it can give you extra critical chance when you finish her as an operator, but it's only 50%, so it's not that much. And it's just like an extra width with your sling, your void sling is really not that worth it. And then the Waybound passives are, I'd probably say, are the worst ones, as it's just increased movement speed and increased void sling distance. Like, it's nice utility to have, but some of the Waybounds are very good, and this one is just like kind of mediocre. So you could consider Naramon to actually be the best focus school. You could consider Naramon to be the worst focus school because it is the only really one that is niche. But it's so good in its niche that it still has its own place. So outside of Naramon, I want to look at Madurai and Zenurik first. And this is why I want to talk about... And I picked on Naramon first because of its weird niche that it has that the other 4 don't have. But now I want to think about which focus school should you start with when you first unlock focus schools. Because when you first unlock focus schools, the game allows you to get 1 for free. But the other 4, you then have to get, I think it's 50,000 standing, before you can even unlock them and start putting focus into them, right? So which one should you start with? Well, definitely not these 2 or Naramon. The only 2 ones that I think really should be in the question of which one you should start with is Madurai and Zenurik. The reason why Madurai and Zenurik are the 2 I would recommend you considering which one to start with is because Madurai is... While the focus schools are all really balanced, and honestly, they do all fit their own use case, and I think they're actually in a really good place right now in the game, Madurai is arguably the best focus school. Or at least it has the best argument for being the best focus school. So you could definitely consider getting Madurai for that reason, because it is really good. It offers a lot of stuff, more so than the other focus schools do at least. And the other advantage of Madurai is you need Madurai for Eidolons. You absolutely need Madurai for Eidolons. If you don't have Madurai, you're not doing Eidolons right. Like, not even that, you're not doing Eidolons, basically. Like, you'd barely touch the Eidolon shield, you won't be able to get anywhere with it. You need Madurai. So getting Madurai first could be really helpful because of that. But I want to look at Zenurik first before Madurai, because Zenurik is actually the one I would argue you should get with your first pick. And it's not just because it's the first one I picked, but it's because Zenurik has an extra utility that can be very helpful, specifically more so for newer players. And that is because of this ability right here called Wellspring. So what does Wellspring do? Well, as you can see, my energy is at 140 right now. If I can go into my operator, sorry, I have Naramon still activated. Let's fix that. Let's go to Zenurik. So if I go into my operator and I cast my first ability as my operator, I now have energy regen over time. Now, late in the game, this actually isn't really good, as Wellspring, the energy regen over time you get from Wellspring isn't nearly as good as other methods of energy regen, like Arcane Energize, Equilibrium, or anything like, or Nourish even. Like, there are tons of much better ways to get better energy economy than Wellspring will grant you. But earlier on, when you're going through the storyline and you don't have access to these mods or fully built frames and all that stuff, Wellspring can be very useful to you because it could be the difference to barely ever being able to activate your abilities because you have literally no energy economy to actually being able to cast your abilities because now you actually have at least a somewhat reliable energy economy. If you're already comfortable with things like Equilibrium and other stuff like that, like Equilibrium alone should give you plenty of energy economy to the point where Wellspring shouldn't really matter or be that great of an improvement. But it's definitely something to think about with Wellspring, because it's a way to give you guaranteed free energy. And a Zenurik Wellspring by itself isn't the only benefit that Zenurik has when it comes to energy. Its passive energy pulse gives you additional 50% energy from every energy orb you pick up, but as energy regen over time for 5 seconds. In a Might, another one of Zenurik's passive, gives you a free ability cast every 60 seconds. And so these 3 abilities are great for just generically improving your energy economy. Like, they're not going to make your energy economy way better, and like I said, there are much better ways to improve energy economy beyond Zenurik. But earlier on, you don't really have as easy access to those versions, so Zenurik can definitely and should be definitely something you consider as a noob for energy economy. The other benefits of Zenurik is Hardened Wellspring. If you cast your first ability, Wellspring, in your operator twice, you'll create this bigger bubble, which will last longer. You'll keep the energy regen effect, but you will also gain an additional 20% power strength while in the bubble. So that's an extra benefit. You'll get some extra power strength from Zenurik as well, which is definitely a nice bonus. You do have Temporal Drag, which is its second ability. Honestly, it really doesn't do anything. It just slows enemies, which could be good. Like, slowing enemies can definitely have benefit to it, and precision headshots increase, and it will increase the damage of headshots as well. But I've never really used Temporal Drag, and it really isn't that useful. And again, Disarming Sling and No Quarter, again, isn't really that amazing. They're not that useful. Yes, you can use it to disarm enemies, which I guess you could argue is pretty useful. And yes, you do increase your operator regen rate if you just kill the disarmed enemies. But the Waybound Passives also just increase the operator energy regen and also the operator energy maximum. So again, I don't really see use for that. I definitely recommend the best things about Zenurik is on this side right here. Everything about it, including the energy pulse in a Might, is definitely really useful, especially early on. And even now, Zenurik is still probably my most used focus school, and that's because when you get into a mission, most Warframes, typically at least, every Warframe typically won't have enough starting energy to set up your damage rotation, and there are really only 3 ways to fix that. Number 1 is you drop a energy pad, which is probably what most people do. But personally, I don't like doing that because I don't want to be constantly crafting energy pads just so I can set up a damage rotation. So I like to do one of the other 2 things. The other one is to run Amber Archon Shards or the mod Preparation, which increases the amount of energy you start with, which fixes the issue, and now you'll have enough energy to start up your damage rotation. Or the last one is to just use Zenurik, because when you get into the mission, you can pop Wellspring immediately, and you'll get, from Wellspring, you'll be able to get enough energy to set up your damage rotation, and you'll be good. So that's why I run Zenurik more than any other focus school, because I use it to set up my damage rotation. Beyond that, and it does give me additional survivability from Energy Pulse and Inner Might, but besides that, I never really use Wellspring except for the start of the mission. But I do use Zenurik more than anything else. Going on to Madurai, though. Madurai is definitely, again, like I said, the best candidate for the argument on which one is the best focus school. And that's because everything here does something really good. Literally everything. There is not a bad feature in Madurai. Its worst feature is probably its 2 Waybound perks, as it is simply just increasing your amp energy and amp energy regen. But that is still really good. Like, it is still really good. And that's probably its worst thing. So, what does Madurai do? Well, Madurai is about damage, and it does it great. Both increasing the damage of your Warframe and your Operator. And that's why Madurai is a must-have for Adelons, as it is going to be your main way of increasing your damage. As you have Phoenix Talons, which just increases the damage output of your Operator. And then you have your power transfer, which will increase the critical damage by 100% from your operator when you transfer into it. And it also increases casting speed for your Warframe by 50%. So Madurai will give you 50% casting speed just by going in and out of your operator, which is massive. Then you have Chain Sling, which really just makes slinging cost less energy after the first sling. But the biggest benefit is this one, Sling Strength. After doing a Chain Sling, so that's just Void Sling twice or more, you get 40% extra ability strength for 20 seconds, which is double what you get from Zenurik. Then, of course, you have the legendary Void Strike, which is a gigantic ability buff for both your Operator and your Warframe. And the second perf will even give you weapon efficiency. Contamination Wave will... A Contamination Wave makes enemies more vulnerable to damage, and I'm pretty sure it stacks on itself too if you cast it multiple times. And it's the extra effect from this ability. The extra effect of this ability makes it stack again, so it increases how weak enemies are, and it can stack twice. And it also makes the ability last longer. So everything is about damage. You can make enemies weaker, you can increase your damage output, casting speed, damage output of your Operator, and even extra ability strength. It is amazing. It is a fantastic focus skill. You can get extra damage out of it, casting speed, and power strength. There's definitely a lot of utility with Madurai, and it gives you a lot of options. Which leads us to Unairu and Vazarin. I actually think Unairu and Vazarin are the worst focus skills. And that's not necessarily saying they're bad. It's just because I don't think there's much use for them, especially in this type of the game. And I don't use them very often. They are definitely the two I use the least. Vazarin is the focus skill I use the least by far. So let's go into Unairu first. So while I would say Unairu isn't as useful, it does have one really good perk, which definitely adds a big boon to Unairu, and why, honestly, you wouldn't want to consider Unairu the worst focus skill. And also, it has the best Waybound passive, and it's you can revive yourself with your Operator. If you ever watch a YouTube video and you see the YouTuber get downed and then revive themselves with the Operator, that's how you do it, and it works on any Warframe, right? Poise is the one I was talking about, however, though, as it gives you immunity to knockdown effects for 40 seconds. So this is what you do. You run Unairu if you're not running Prime Sure-Footed. And that alone makes Unairu a fantastic focus skill, because you get that knockdown resistance. Yeah, simply running Prime Sure-Footed does really get rid of the usefulness of this, but it is very good if you don't want to run Prime Sure-Footed. You don't want to put an extra slot on it, don't want to do the extra 4 more, extra 2 4 more maybe that you might need to even run Prime Sure-Footed, or maybe you don't even have Prime Sure-Footed yet. Additionally, Unairu will also armor strip enemies. So the second ability will send out a bull that explodes that will fully armor strip enemies by 100%. So it's a single target armor strip, and for that reason, you're not going to use it for like generic ability DPS armor strips, but it is really good for single target armor strips, especially if you don't want to have a helmet on it. So for like bosses and other stuff like that. So Unairu is definitely really good in that regard. The second effect from this isn't really as useful, as it just increases operator damage. Definitely useful if you were using Eidolons, and was very good back in the day with the old Eidolon meta. But it's so easy to solo Eidolons now that you would really just want to run Madurai instead of Unairu. By a lot, because Madurai is way better for damage for your Operator. So again, this follows a similar issue as the extra damage you get from Naramon. Madurai is just way better for it. And then we also have Madurai's second ability, which shield strips. So it will fully get rid of enemy shields. And then the second effect for Mirror allows you to void sling out of it to increase the range of it as the second area of effect around you, kind of similar to Warframe, and it will also increase the duration of it. So again, not as useful, especially not as much as the armor strip, but could still have use. You have Stone Skin, which some people might like quite a lot actually, as it does increase your Warframe armor, but it's only about 200, which isn't going to give you that much of an increase by your damage reduction. But if you are health tanking, it is definitely something to consider, and it will make you tankier. And extra armor without having to mod for it is a bonus. Like, you do get it. This is basically free armor, which is basically free damage reduction. So it's definitely something to think about. As it, I wouldn't use Unairu specifically for this, but if you are using Unairu, it's definitely going to be a big bonus. And then these two perks basically just extra utility for when your Operator gets downed, to avoid Operator transfer static and also summon your Warframe to you instead of having to go back to your Warframe. They're really just, you're never really going to use this because you don't go into your Operator long enough to get downed, so it's not I don't think it's that big of that big of a reason. I will go into more detail about the Waybound passives after I go through all of them. So yes, Unairu is definitely very good if you want that knockback resistance and also that extra armor strip, especially for priority targets. So Unairu has a pretty clear place in the game, which leads us to Vazarin. And Vazarin does have a place. Like I said, I do think the focus skills are very well balanced right now, but personally I find the use case for Vazarin to be something I never really need. But it does offer something that could be very helpful. And it has probably the two other second best Waybound Passives in it as well. But I would say Vazarin is probably the least in need of ranking maxing out, and you can see it is the last one I have maxed out. I have quite a bit I haven't maxed out here yet, but it's still definitely useful. You still want to invest into it while you can, as you are going to get a usefulness out of it. This alone, the extra affinity radius, could definitely be useful for certain Warframes whose abilities scale off ability radius and not range, like Harrow as an example. So that can be definitely useful. Many Soul is just quicker revives. It's really not a big deal, especially if you're a solo player like me. So I'm never ever going to use this perk because there's no other person to revive. Additionally, most people will have Last Grasp activated because of the Waybound, and they'll just be able to revive themselves. So the need to revive other players isn't really a big issue right now. Then we do have Void Regen and Squad Regen. Basically what they do is they just heal you while you're in Void mode, and Squad Regen will apply that heal to all allies in affinity range. If you wanted to be a support, this could definitely be like a nice little buff to have, but there's so little use for a support in this game, especially because there are much better versions of healing in this game. So again, this isn't really something you're going to be useful. What Vazarin really shines at though is its two abilities. Void Snare, which I'll talk about first. Void Snare is a grouping ability. And if you don't have grouping from any other source, so say you're running a Warframe that needs grouping, and you don't want to run a helmet, and you don't want to run Naramon, you can use Vazarin, right? It is honestly a very effective grouping ability. You simply just need to so it's deactivated right now. Simply just go into your operator and then grouping, right? So if you don't want to run grouping on your if you want something a bit more consistent than Nautilus, if you want something a bit more consistent than Nautilus, and you don't want to run grouping as a helmet ability, then yes, Vazarin all the way. You definitely want to run Vazarin for that grouping. The other thing that Vazarin does is the second perk to this ability is called Protective Sling. And what it does is enemies that are inflicted by it will get immunity, complete damage immunity, for 5 seconds at max strength. Mine isn't max strength. Actually, it might be now. So you can literally just be immune, like completely invincible to damage, because you can just run every time Void Sling runs out, Protective Sling runs out, you can just go back, sling into yourself, and you're immune to damage again. Like literally just never die. So this gives you perfect survivability. You can use this instead of rolling guard to give you some iframes if you need it. And you become immune for 5 seconds. And it's as easy as that, right? Sorry, I don't want to finish you. I want to do that. Thank you. So that's this perk here. It's the second effect from Void Snare. It does increase from Void Snare. As if you were to Void Sting through enemies that are trapped within Void Snare, it would regen, give some your allies health in ability affinity range. So Protective Sting is like the extra bit of that, and it's not just you. If you Void Sting it yourself or any of your allies, they'll get that 5 seconds of immunity, and they'll be healed by 60% over 5 seconds as well. So it's Protective Sting is a very, very, very powerful perk. It can give you complete immunity to damage. It gives you 5 seconds of iframe, which is really long, longer than Rolling Guard. Rolling Guard is 3 seconds. It's a very good perk, so you definitely could consider running Vazarin for that reason. And then you have Guardian Shell. Guardian Shell gives you think like Volt's Shield or Garuda's Shield. It gives you a shield in front of you like that, except it's very weak. The main reason why you would run Guardian Shell isn't for the actual shield itself, But for this perk here, because when Guardian Shell breaks for 12 seconds, you'll gain 150% shield regen and 80% shield reduction delay, which of course scales with mods like Fast Reflection. And if you get enough shield reduction delay, you can basically be immune because your shield will regen so quickly when it gets hit that it will just constantly reactivate your shield gate and you'll never be able to take damage to your health. So Guardian Break is, again, a really good perk and can give you a lot of survivability if you're running a shield tank setup. So you can definitely consider doing that. And while your shield is activated, you'll see I have it here. It's in front of me. It does give me complete forward damage immunity. Like, I won't take any damage from while Shield Break is activated. But you'll notice you definitely don't want to rely on Shield Break for survivability, as it breaks very quickly. So if I get... they've been affected by radiation. So I activate it, they'll come and attack me, hopefully. And you'll see it's broken, like, immediately. It's, like, immediately broken. So there's very little hope. It does give you full, complete damage reduction, directional damage reduction while it's around. But it breaks very quickly. It does kind of have an effect like Warding Halo and... what's it called? Warding Halo and Iron Skin, where it has the period of invulnerability and it will add, the damage it takes will add to its health bar, but it breaks way too quickly to rely on it as for survivability. But you can definitely, with things like Fast Reflection, get a lot of survivability from Guardian Break. So Guardian Break and Protector Sling give you a lot of survivability. So Vazarin is really for survivability and grouping, which is very useful, right? So you get survivability and grouping from Vazarin. I just personally never really find the need for either one, because if I do run grouping, I normally just run Nautilus, and that's fine for me. And I never normally need so much survivability as Vazarin, because Vazarin does give you a lot of survivability, and normally my survivability is more than well enough without Vazarin, so I don't need to run Vazarin for that reason. So really, I would mostly be running Zenurik. I might be running Madurai for casting speed typically, and obviously for Eidolons. I'll be running Unairu for that knockback resistance, and any quick attack melee build, I'll be running Naramon. So there is definitely a lot of use for each of these focus skills, and it really is just whichever one you think is going to best suit your build or even your playstyle and other stuff like that. Before we finish off this video though, I do want to go over in more detail about the Waybound Passives. If you don't know what Waybound Passives are, every focus skill has 2 of these. And they have, as you can see, they have 4 upgrades instead of 3 upgrades. Once you unlock the 4th upgrade, which requires a lot of focus as well as I think it's a Brilliant Eidolon Shard, that passive will then be unlocked to you always, regardless of what focus skill you're running. So as you can see, I have all the Waybound passives activated. So I have all of these passives activated for my operator, no matter what focus skill I'm running. And pretty simply, I'll go over them pretty quickly. You do have Last Grasp, which again gives you that revive if you get downed. And the excess version of Unairu increases the damage you do with Last Grasp the longer you're in it, which is definitely useful to make it more consistent. Vazarin's ones, which I didn't actually mention, are increasing your operator's health and armor by 200%. If I go into my operator, you will see I have 1050 health, and that is from Vazarin's Waybound passive. It's also a big boon as you'll also get armor, so it also gives you a lot of survivability. And this one is also fantastic as it will give your operator health regen, and that health regen is then doubled if you're in your Warframe. So even if you're on your Warframe, your operator will still be healed over time. In fact, it's faster over time. And this then stacks with the the Endurance 9th, the Drifter Intrinsic Endurance 9th perk, which also gives you even more regen for your operator and Drifter outside of Deburik. Then we have Madurai, which is giving you increased maximum energy and also energy regen for your amp. Zenurik gives you maximum energy and energy regen for your abilities. And then Naramon increases Void Sling duration and also movement speed. So these two ones definitely have the best Waybounds, and these ones are more like extra utility. But all of them are definitely very good, and would recommend getting all of the Waybound passives as soon as possible, as it will make playing with your operator a lot nicer and a lot tankier. And also the Last Grasp is just an amazing Waybound to have. You definitely want that because it lets you revive yourself. But yeah, so to sum up, I'd recommend when you start the game, probably either pick Zenurik or Madurai. If you do pick Zenurik first, which is why I would recommend over Madurai because of the extra energy, definitely you want to focus on Madurai first after Zenurik because of Eidolons mainly, and also it adds a lot of utility. After that, I'd probably recommend either Unairu, mostly for the Last Grasp, if not also for that Prime Shot-Footed effect, or Naramon because of how amazing it is for melees. And I do use Vazarin the least myself, so you could leave Lazarin for last, like I did. Though I would recommend still upgrading it at least a bit while you're upgrading your others. Never prioritize one completely. I would recommend doing all of them kind of at the same time, but you could focus one more so than the other ones. So you definitely do want to upgrade Vazarin as you're going along, but you can max it out last because I see it being the least useful. Yes, it does give you amazing survivability. I just don't think you really need that survivability unless you're doing endurance. And I do think the grouping, although is really good, you don't need very often. So Vazarin is still really good. All of these have a good place in the game for you. And for a lot of my builds, it really is up to whichever one you think the build needs the most. Very rarely do I have a build that relies specifically on one of these focus schools. And if I do, it's most likely Naramon because it's a melee quick attack build. And they all, as like I've said this a million times already in this video, they all have a use. They're all very useful in one way or another. It really is whichever one you think is going to be the most useful for you. Yes, I've given you my recommendation. I would say Zenurik first, then Madurai, and then even Naramon or Unairu and Vazarin last as your order of priority, while you do 100% give some focus to at least all of them, even a little bit as you do all that. But if you think you're going to really like Vazarin and you're going to really enjoy playing with Vazarin with its grouping and the survivability, then go for Vazarin first. They're all really good. They all have a use. And if you think one of them, based on what I've explained, is going to be better for you specifically, then I would recommend that one. As what I've said is kind of just how I view them and how I play the game, but you may play the game different to me, so you should just go with whatever you think is best. But if you wanted a recommendation, now you have mine. Anyway, I do hope you enjoyed this video, and check out some of my other content, and please leave me a subscribe, as I do really appreciate it. I appreciate all the support you guys give me who have subscribed, and all the nice comments I get, and give me a like on the video too if you've enjoyed. Anyway, until next time, bye-bye!